This was my 10th year at Burning Man, and it was my grandpa's last. Or maybe more accurately, it was the year he became a permanent resident of Black Rock City. On Sunday night, as the massive temple burned in silence, the ashes of his physical body burned alongside the embers of 1,000 memories. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But Grandpa was a presence on the playa all week. Every day as I rode my fur-covered cruiser through the city, people would yell, "Long live Grandpa Caleb," to me as I sped by. Or they'd stop me and make a point of telling me how much they appreciated me sharing his words and his love. I never look at statistics or number of views for my videos, so I was unaware of how many people were watching Grandpa and Hug Nation. I had no idea so many burners had been touched. And I received so many heartfelt hugs that my soul's glow must have doubled in size. In fact, the whole week was flavored by hugs and Hug Nation for me. On Wednesday, I led a group bike ride that made a stop in center camp for a non-sanctioned guerrilla Hug Nation. We demounted our bikes, held hands, and then weaved our way through the crowded tent. Poetically, there was a parade of naked men weaving through the crowd in the opposite direction. So we slapped high fives to many, while avoiding being slapped by their jangle dangles, of course. Then, in the center of the dusty pavilion, I recited some Hug Nation words, and we erupted in a cheer of love. Then we paraded our bikes and headed to the temple. I had seen its beauty the night before while riding around, but in the daylight I was unprepared for the temple's power. I erupted in tears. I fell to the ground and wept, sobbed. Eventually I looked down to see a puddle of wet dust beneath me. I felt incredible, as if I had ejaculated from my tear ducts. I felt so purged of emotion, so raw. Loving hands touched my shoulders as I knelt and cried. A stranger pressed a small metal heart into my palm. It wasn't sadness I felt, but a letting go of 1,000 undefined feelings. Countless lingering cells of loss and fear were flushed from my being. It was not what I expected to share when I led the bike tour to the temple, but it was amazing. And once my consciousness started to return to my body and I started to feel reconnected to myself, it was so wonderful to be surrounded by loving supporters of Hug Nation in my most raw state. I was cradled in love. People talk about the art and the dancing in the desert, but it is these moments of raw purity that are hardest to define. It is what anchors me most soundly to the miracle of existence. It is the magic of love that connects us with the divine. On Friday, I led another, more official Hug Nation in front of center camp. Some people were attracted to the crowd and sign, but most had come specifically to participate in Hug Nation, specifically to have a special moment in honor of Grandpa, specifically to share and be a part of love. I was overwhelmed. I have more than my share of selfishness and narcissism running through me, but little of the magic I experienced this week was about me. I felt like a steward of something much larger. Perhaps it is my attention-seeking and flamboyancy that made me suited for the role, but it still felt like my role was more like a stagehand than a performer. So it was with great humility and honor that I asked the Hug Nation participants to hold hands and channel the love that flows from Hug Nation's ideas and from Grandpa Caleb's life. It was a beautiful gathering. After some words, some silence, and some hugs, I invited everyone to join me for a trip to the temple to leave Grandpa's ashes. Most people went about their way since a storm was approaching and we began to feel raindrops. We even moved Grandpa to tears, I said. I had sealed some of his physical remnants in a small jewelry box and brought them to the playa. I taped it up and attached one of my favorite pictures of him. His hands are clasped in prayer and he is wearing attire he got in the Holy Land. He looks so timeless. He glows like a prophet. I rode to the temple in silence. Tears started flowing long before I arrived at the amazing structure. I went straight to the center of the temple. I knew he belonged at the heart. I set the little box in what felt like the perfect place. Then I fell to my knees and wept, and wept, and wept. But something strange happened every time I would look up at the little box with his picture on it. I stopped crying. I felt his peace. I felt his presence. I knew that his life was lacking nothing and that he shed no tears for his death. Then I would look down again and start crying again. I did this a few more times, looking down and crying my goodbyes, then looking up and feeling his comfort. When I finally left the temple, I felt like everything was as it should be. While inside the temple, the storm had picked up strength. There was a light rain and the wind was getting strong. Dust filled the air and we approached whiteout conditions. I hugged a dozen people and then rode home to camp, feeling spent and whole at the same time. The storm that rocked the city then was the biggest we'd seen, but it didn't last. In fact, when the wind broke and the sun came out, something amazing happened. Occasionally, the divine presence makes itself known at Burning Man in no uncertain terms. And on that Friday afternoon, the entire city was humbled by a beauty beyond anything we participants could have conceived. A full double rainbow lit up the sky over the Black Rock Desert. When I first saw it, it seemed to end on the roof of my gorgeous pink RV, in fact. People filled the streets and stared, mouths wide open in huge smiles and uncontrolled giggles. In this place of super-concentrated brilliance and inspiration, Mother Nature was still able to rock our worlds with awe. I climbed on top of the Hugmobile's roof and danced, sans music, under the double rainbow until it began to fade. If it wasn't there, I'm not sure I would have believed it happened. Can life really be filled with experiences such as these? Can magic and love and emotion really be so strong, even for fleeting moments? As the colors soared over the city, I visualized the brilliant arcs as the loving arms of Grandpa's final embrace, and I knew they would hold all of us in love forever.
Breathe, but don't you sigh when the colors turn to gray. And take heed, but don't reply when there's nothing left to say. Before you bow down to an empty throne, who would you like to be? When all their lies have become your own, who would you like to be?
You only live once. Enjoy the color.